Baldur's Gate 3 has just launched for Xbox while simultaneously snagging the Game of the Year award. So whether you're coming with the pending Steam winter sale, the Xbox launch, or just finally getting around to playing, Baldur's Gate can be a big game to jump into time. In this video today, I'm going to step you through a lot of the more major concepts within the game to help you better understand them. If you're a D&D veteran, you're going to really be able to hit the ground running here, but for some of you, this might be your first C RPG, so we'll take this slow. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos so you can decide if it's the right one for you. So with that being said, here's the subjects we'll be covering today, as it's kind of hard to, truncate an entire beginner's guide down to one thesis statement. But we'll be covering items, combat, ability scores, skills and proficiency, advantage and disadvantage, classes, multi-classes, actions and bonus actions, party compositions, buying and selling to vendors, and lastly, some closing thoughts on how to approach the game. You can navigate to each one of those subjects using the chapters in both the timeline and the description, but if none of those subjects cover what you're looking for, please feel free to shut the video down and get back to enjoying your first foray into the wild world of Baldur's Gate. Before you head out, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. I currently have something like 89% unsubscribed viewership on the channel, and that's a metric I'm trying to change this year, so every little bit helps. If you need help with any other subject in Baldur's Gate 3, check out my playlist linked below and at the end of the video. It has something like 40 plus videos on the subject, so there's plenty of things to cover. Let's get started here on my ultimate beginner's guide for Baldur's Gate 3. So to start us off, let's just go right into difficulty. And I'm going to be pretty brief about this because this is going to come down to the personal individual and how they want to approach this game. Are you really not much for a challenge, or do CRPGs kind of overwhelm you and you just kind of want to see what the narrative's all about? You're going to go with Explorer. You want a balanced level of play in the sense that things will be pretty much on your level. You're not going to be dealing with enemies that are higher level than you. They'll have loadouts that are pretty on par with what you'll be dealing with equipment-wise in the game. And you want to just deal with an overall balanced game where the odds are not stacked against you. Keep in mind, if you have no D&D experience, balanced will be pretty difficult for you. In fact, every difficulty, for the exception of Explorer, will be difficult for you until you get to level 5. That's when the game kind of starts to give you a bit of a power spike. So keep that in mind. If you do jump into balance and you're like, man, this game's kind of hard right now, it'll get better. Trust me. Now, the last two difficulties, Tactician and Honor, are truly for people that have either played Baldur's Gate before or are very familiar with D&D rule set. If you know 5th edition really well, Tactician should kind of come as a natural way of playing the game, because it's all about action economy, using your action and bonus actions properly, and ensuring that you get the most out of every single turn for every single character, taking advantage of your environment, and also being wary of what an enemy's resistances are to either mundane weapons, magic things, whatever it is. And then Honor mode is Tactician on steroids. So you're dealing with harder enemies. Your bosses now have legendary actions. Now, and if you're familiar with the tabletop, that just means that at the end of every turn, something will happen. So every boss is that much harder. Also, Honor mode is like an Iron Man, meaning you will only have one save. If you die in Honor mode, the game gives you can keep playing. You have a save that you can play at will, but you pretty much just come back down to Tactician as far as the game's relative difficulty is concerned. Honor mode and Tactician will play very similarly, for the exception of that pure save. That single save. You can see right here, it shows you all those Honor mode details. And then you have Custom, which is pretty much the ability to choose certain things. Like, hey, you know what? I'd rather have the Explorer level of enemy aggression, but give me the additional combat mechanics of Tactician. And what that also means is monsters that might have behaved one way on Balanced will have additional armament or additional abilities on Tactician. So just keep those things in mind. If you're going about this the first time, my recommendation is just to go with Balanced. Enjoy the game, enjoy the narrative, then come back on Tactician or Honor mode. I will tell you though that Honor, if you beat it on Honor, you'll get a gold D20 die skin, which is kind of cool. But those are your breakdowns for the difficulty. And a big next step after you're choosing your difficulty is going to be your origin. Now, you can choose one of the origin characters, which are basically the 6 characters that you get in the game as companions, and you play as them. meaning you'd be able to play as them 100% and you'd get special access to portions of their story that you would otherwise not get if you played Custom or Dark Urge. Now, what I'm going to be talking about really right here is both Custom and Dark Urge. The origin characters are the origin characters. You press a button right here and it'll tell you all you need to know about the character. And you're not locked into their class. You can re-roll their class as soon as you unlock something within Act 1. You can re-roll all of the classes of all the origin characters, either if you're playing them or if they are one of your companions. So Gale, I can make him be a paladin if I want, or I can play him and change him to a paladin, whatever I want. So don't feel locked into anything. But the two characters you're going to think about pretty much are your custom character and the Dark Urge. Custom character is you're just playing the game. Whatever it throws your way, you're dealing with it on your own terms. It's completely as if you were to approach a D&D campaign without any backstory created for you other than the one you bring to the table. So when you play an origin character of custom, please make a little bit of an RP for yourself. Play something that you want to play. Don't worry about your race, your class, anything like that. They're all going to get you through the game at a very great amount of difficulty and a good amount of I guess overpoweredness. You know, there's no one that's really completely terrible at this game. All races and classes are very, very, very viable. But the Dark Urge, on the other hand, is another way to play the game where kind of think of it like the Dungeon Master has a back origin or an origin already in mind for your character. You will play through entirely like a custom character, but you will be dealt a series of circumstances that will apply solely to the Dark Urge background. Now, the Dark Urge background is very, I don't want to say homicidal, maybe you're kind of a bit of a psychopath and you don't understand where these dark urges are coming from and you're fighting them or you're embracing them, kind of falling into this murderous rampage or the sadistic nature or resisting it and trying to push it away from yourself. It's entirely up to you which one you want to choose. I think if you play one, then you should go back and play the other after, because playing the Dark Urge will shut off portions of the game. You will kill characters that you have no control over whether or not you kill them, and it will then shut off quests and vendors. That's not that big of a deal. It just is an entirely different way to play because the custom will be an entirely different experience. So please choose the one that's going to be best for you. If you've played Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, play the Dark Urge. It's going to be harder, but play the Dark Urge. And maybe not even harder. It'll just maybe be a little bit more on the rails, I guess I will say. But if you're just coming into this for the first time and you want to just enjoy every little bit of it and you don't want anything on the rails, then play custom. That's probably the best way to summarize both statements. Now, as far as character creation is concerned, I've covered this in its own video, so I'm going to skip everything to talk about here with race, subrace, class, subclass, background, all that. I just want to quickly say in this video, like I said earlier, this is a single player narrative game. Don't worry about the best. Don't worry about the min-max. Play what you want. If you want to be a drow paladin, then by all means, do it. If you want to be a halfling barbarian, then just go ahead and do it. If you want to be a dwarf necromancer, do it. There's nothing on the internet that's going to tell you what to play that is correct. The only thing that's going to be true is what you want to play. So just have at this. It's a single player narrative game, like I said before. There really is no real wrong way to play this. Trust me, I've made plenty of videos and talked about this and played this game way too much to tell you a farce right now. But what I do want to just quickly talk about is your background. Try and, again, create a little bit of a role play for your character. Are you a former soldier who has kind of fallen into some monastic order and become a paladin? Are you some charlatan who has spent their ways kind of stealing from people and lying to people and now has kind of turned their back on all that and then has become a paladin? Are you a noble son who has followed in his father's footsteps and joined a paladin order? Are you a folk hero? You know, whatever it is, create that background for yourself because it will allow you to really enjoy the game in a lot of different ways. And stick with that background's kind of role play of decisions, and you'll find that you won't min-max your way through, but you will ultimately enjoy every decision you make when you're playing Baldur's Gate. Having now talked about so many things, let's go over skills, abilities, proficiencies, all of that action. And to understand all of it, we have to start with the conversation about rolls. So you're going to roll for everything in this. You're going to roll for skills, roll to attack thing. You're going to roll for an ability check. So you'll see concepts that say attack rolls, ability rolls, skill rolls, and we'll kind of talk about them in the respective locations and what have you, but it's worth noting that pretty much everything in the game is going to be rolled or checked with a D20 die. Either you're going to physically see it in front of you, or it'll be just kind of behind the scenes. You'll see it in a combat log, wherever it is. So to start this conversation off, we're going to talk about skill proficiency. So every single race, every single class, and then every single background will have specific proficiencies that they can take advantage of. So if you see all these checkboxes, these checkboxes are what my race and class combination can allow for. Choosing a different class would maybe change what checkboxes I can choose. And each one of these skills has a ability that it corresponds to. So for example, athletics here, if you look right below athletics, it says strength. You'll see +3 to athletic checks. Well, what does that mean? How does that work? Well, strength will govern a specific set of skills. In this case, it would simply be athletics. Let's go ahead and look at charisma. My charisma right now is giving me a +2 to charisma checks, which that means is all of the charisma skills, which are at the very bottom of the screen here, I'll be getting a +2 to because of that +2 to charisma there. And in addition to that, when I click one of these checkboxes, I am becoming proficient in it. So that adds your proficiency bonus. So at the top of this screen, you'll see proficiency bonus right here. And it says your proficiency bonus is added to ability checks and saving throws against skills you are proficient in, making them more likely to succeed. It is also added to attack rolls when attacking with weapons you are proficient with, increasing your hit chance. So from levels 1 to 4, that's a +2. As soon as you hit level 5, that +2 becomes a +3. And as soon as you hit level 9, that +2 becomes a +3. I'm sorry, that +3 becomes a +4. So it goes from 1 to 3 to 4 at level 1, then 5, then 9. Just to kind of recap that because I'm stupid. Outside of our skill proficiencies, we also have weapon and armor proficiency. With weapon and armor proficiencies, you're adding your proficiency bonus into any weapon roll. So you can see here, simple weapon proficiency. Add your proficiency bonus to attack rolls with simple weapons. Hovering over attack rolls, a dice roll that determines whether an attack hits a target. The attack succeeds if the roll matches or exceeds the target's armor class. Don't worry, we'll get into that. There's plenty of conversation about that in a bit. And it's important to note that an attack roll is not a damage roll. So first you have to see if you actually hit the target. And once you hit the target, then you would roll damage, which would be based off of your weapon and a number of other things that we'll take a look at when we look at equipment. Now, outside of your weapon proficiencies is your armor proficiency. You have light, medium, heavy, and shields. That's all 4 of your armor proficiencies. To be proficient in an armor means this: wearing medium armor, since we have a medium armor proficiency, will not impose disadvantage on your attack rolls or prevent you from casting spells. Disadvantage and advantage, what they both mean is that you will roll 2 die and take the higher of the 2 if it's an advantage, or 2 die and take the lower of the 2 if it's a disadvantage, which just tells you right here. You roll 2 dice and use a lower value negated by advantage. Guess what that is? Roll 2 die and use the higher value. So if you get lost on any of these concepts, just simply take a look at them and see what they can, what tooltip, how it describes it. I don't know how this works in Xbox. I assume there'll be a button that allows you to take a look at each one of these highlighted figures. And then outside of that, we've talked about skill proficiencies. We've talked about weapon and armor proficiencies. There is also a proficiency in an actual ability score, and we're about to get into that. But you can see here for charisma, since I'm a paladin, I am proficient in it, meaning that I will add my proficiency bonus to any saving throw for charisma. What is a charisma saving throw? That is something like, okay, someone casts, I think, charm person, charisma. Basically anything that would use your charisma to see if it hits you. An example further would be strength checks, or strength saving throws and dexterity saving throws. Certain abilities like maybe like a fireball, maybe a dexterity saving throw to see if you can jump out of the way. Whatever it is, you'll see all those things. But being proficient in it allows you to get a flat bonus. Great. So again, this would be a +2 because of our proficiency in charisma. Now, let's talk about abilities. So to bring this back all full circle, we go to ability pool. And ability is what you might think of as like stats, if you think of it that word from another character, from another game, another RPG. And your ability scores start at 8. This is the base of everything. And at 8, you have a -1 to every single check. So what that means is if I were to roll a strength check and I rolled a 15, I'd actually get a 14 because of the -1 after that, right? But we had 2 points here. This comes to 10 and it's a 0. So that is no penalties, but no advantages. Basically 10 is your real true baseline of no bad things. And every 2 points after 10, we get 1 point added to our respective ability check. So 12 points into strength makes 4 plus 1 strength check. 14 is plus 2, up to 16, which brings us up to plus 3. Now this has different maxes depending upon what is modifying it, but I believe the ultimate max of an ability score in the game is 24. And you'll only be able to do that through additional items and stuff like that. Don't worry about getting these to the absolute max. Just play the game and have fun. I would say get them to 16 here in character creation, though, depending upon the character you're going to play. So let's go through very quickly what these ability points do. Strength is going to be dictated towards any melee weapon for the most part. There are then finesse weapons, which will then use your dexterity. Strength can also dictate, though, your carry capacity and your jump distance. So these things do keep those things in mind when it comes to the platforming portions of the game where you have to leap and find stuff. But dexterity will determine your damage with ranged weapons and finesse weapons, which will use your dexterity over your strength. And also, it will add to your initiative as well as your armor class. I'm gonna give you an actual concrete example of armor class, but for every plus point here it says, so +1 to dexterity, that's added to your armor class, assuming it can be added. There's limitations on stuff like heavy armor, which will not give you a bonus to your armor class to your dexterity. But you can see this over here, +1 to initiative, +2 to initiative, and +3 to initiative. And you're getting that from that +3 to dexterity here. And initiative is a die that is rolled at the beginning of combat. So if you rolled a 15, everyone rolls a die, and you go in order of whose die roll is the highest. Well, yours automatically gets a +3. So this can be very advantageous depending upon the class you're playing. Constitution is going to dictate your hit points, but it also will dictate something called a concentration roll, which is used for specific spells. We'll talk about that in spellcasting. Intelligence is used for wizards, and wisdom is used for clerics, druids, and rangers. Lastly, your charisma is used for bards, paladins, sorcerers, and warlocks. It also influences trader prices. So higher charisma rolls will allow you to get discounts at vendors. What's worth noting is you'll have a primary stat, which the game will just outright tell you, hey, go ahead and put points here into strength because you're a paladin and you want to use melee weapons. Well, you are also a paladin that needs its charisma for specific attributes or specific things like their spellcasting capabilities or any of their special class-specific benefits. Well, that's all going to come from charisma. Well, you're also going to need some constitution, so you'll probably want to put that up to a good number. And you're probably going to want a little bit of dexterity because you're wearing heavy armor. And I like to have wisdom at 10, so that way I can resist any of the things that would otherwise control my character, like hold person and stuff like that. Any of the spells that it is. So if you wanted to play a paladin, this is what it would look like. If you wanted to play a min-maxy type of paladin. But I can simply press this button, and you can see that this is not that much different, right? It changed my constitution dexterity, and that was it. So use recommended is not a bad way to play the game. I wanted to explain how these ability points work, though, so that you understand them going into it. And I also wanted to show you what the difference between me, someone who is min-max this to a hole in the ground, and you who just wants to have fun with the game, right? That's the difference. It's a difference of 2 dexterity and 1 constitution. So it's better to have even numbers across the board here because you get nothing if you're at an uneven number. 17 strength just gives me +3 to strength checks. Having 18 strength would give me that +4. And there's plenty of ways to get a single strength point in the game. But if you don't know what they are, either weapon-wise or you don't know what the feats are in the game, then please just go with an even number. Make it easy on yourself. Don't worry about it. You're not going to mess anything up. Trust me. There's plenty of ways to mess up in this game, and you won't do it here. You can re-roll all of this at any point in the game that you want. You can just simply re-spec your character by simply going to a character that you'll unlock in the very first 2 hours of the game. So this is not something to be kind of locked in an analysis paralysis. I just wanted to explain how each one of them work. And again, the last thing here to connect all of these dots is that they all correspond to specific skills, right? We've talked about this, but just to kind of reinforce it, intelligence, for example, will apply to, there's Arcana, and history, and investigation, and nature, as well as religion. You can see they're all tied to intelligence. Or animal handling, and insight, and medicine, and perception are all tied to wisdom. Your benefit in those, your ability bonus in those, applies to this skill. So now we've talked about all this stuff in character creation, let's talk a little about some stuff that has to do with combat and actions and stuff like that. Loading into the game, let's talk about armor class, because this is a very important part of combat and how everything works. So bringing up our inventory, we're going to take a look at our character. And we can see at the bottom of the screen, it says armor class. I'm going to take this armor off of my character, and you can see that it is now 10. 10 is the base armor class of every single character in the game, no matter what. You then add on to this armor class using your dexterity, or you take on the armor class of any armor you put on. So if I put this armor on, my armor class is now 14. Keep in mind, my dexterity is 10, so I get no benefit from my dexterity to my armor class. If this was 12 though, my armor class would be 15 because it would add +1 to this. And what you should see here though is that the type of armor reflects how much bonus you can pull from your AC. So for example, the scale mail of the ancients is at the very bottom here. AC bonus from dexterity limited to +2. Now, there are different ways you can change that and mitigate that and do all sorts of stuff with feats, and there's special items in the game, but we're talking about just the base principles. So, medium armor, for all intents and purposes, no matter what it is, will always be limited to +2, for the exception, of course, of special rare ones that will tell you otherwise. Also, you'll see a disadvantage on stealth checks on this heavy armor. Now, I'm going to put all 3 of the armor types up here on the screen, and you can see each one, light, medium, and heavy armor, and you see the armor class difference from each one as well. Basically what the trade-off here is, light armor will allow you to use the full bonus from your dexterity. So if you were to say have 16 dexterity, it would add +3 to your AC, and you will not have any kind of disadvantage on stealth checks. Medium armor takes a kind of middle ground route. You will get just a +2 to your AC from dexterity, and you'll probably still have disadvantage on stealth checks depending upon the heavy or the medium armor. And lastly, we have heavy armor, which will give you the highest amount of raw AC, as you can see here, that our plate armor is giving us just 18 armor class just added into the character. But we get no bonus from dexterity. So you'll see that there's those trade-offs, and of course there's the disadvantage on stealth checks. It's why I say if you're wearing heavy armor, just don't worry about your dexterity, because you can't pull a bonus from it anyway outside of your initiative. There's one other little piece to the armor class equation here, and that is your shield. Those shields, if you can wear them, will just give you a flat bonus to your armor class, almost like a dex, right? Your dexterity adds plus whatever. Well, this is going to give me +2 armor class. Regardless of whatever armor I'm wearing, it will always give me this bonus, and it will not give me any kind of issues when it comes to stealthing, what have you. And keep in mind, just like the other armor classes, the other armor proficiencies, if you are not proficient in an armor, you cannot cast spells. Same thing with the shield. If you're not proficient in a shield and you have a shield on, you cannot cast a spell. You can have heavy armor on and be proficient in heavy armor, and you can cast wizard spells if you want. Or vice versa, putting light armor on and casting whatever the hell else you want, as long as you are proficient in it. There's, of course, other ways to add to your armor class, through spells, through potions and stuff like that. But this is just the basics and how all of this works and comes together. With all that though, we now have your actions and your bonus actions. The main ways that you interact with and control or damage or affect the world. And that is your action, your primary action, and your bonus action. For all intents and purposes, everything that you do will be done with these. Even if you're not in combat, you can go ahead and press this button. I don't know what it is on console, unfortunately, to enter into kind of like a pseudo combat. It's called turn-based mode. From here, you can kind of sleuth around, stealth into locations, makes things a little bit easier for you, whatever it is. But this gives you an idea of how your actions and bonus actions work without jumping into combat. So if I click this button or select it on console, this will show me all of the things that I can do that require an action. Conversely, if I press this button, it shows me all the things I can do that require a bonus action. Things that are bonus actions are typically stuff that using a potion on yourself is a bonus action. Most any and all potions will do. Casting some spells are going to be bonus actions. Doing little tiny things like jumping or dipping my weapon in fire or shoving something is a bonus action. Then as far as our action goes, they're the more critical things you can do. Casting any of your major spells that you can do, any of your weapon attacks, your weapon actions that you get through proficiency in a weapon, your major things like dashing or hiding or helping someone up that's been downed or throwing something, they're all done with your action. Even so, some things require both. For example, if I'm dual wielding, if I want to attack with my main and my offhand, it will use both. I can press this button right here and kind of toggle that. But for all intents and purposes, most attacks just used your action. It'll even tell you right here at the bottom the currency that is being used to do whatever that ability is. So for example, too, here, let's go ahead and look at Lay on Hand. Lay on Hands is going to require an action and a Lay on Hand charge. So even though we have our actions and our bonus actions, we also have these other little nodules that will give us context tips as to what they're going to apply to, right? Like, okay, I click this button. Well, it's just the cantrips. Click this button. Well, that's what's basically you're clicking this and seeing what uses this every single turn. So a turn is basically when this character activates and then when it activates again. That distance, the time between that and between everything else happening is a turn. So if I hover over this, it says, there you go, recharge once per turn. Replenishes resource, your primary resource in combat. So in kind of conclusion here, your actions are pretty much every little thing that you can do that's kind of major. Even just doing something like taking things on and off can oftentimes, as you can see right there, be an action. So I put that back on, it cost me an action to do so. And that now means I have to wait a whole turn before I can do something. So if your character gets disarmed and you pick up your weapon, that's all fine and good. That's not going to cost you anything. But to put that weapon back on, it's going to cost you an action. So your actions are kind of your primary ones, the big one that you're going to do a lot of your stuff with, whereas the bonus actions are usually things that are like mobility related. Even spells are sometimes they're more mobility related, like something like Misty Step, which allows you to teleport, is mobility related. Stuff like too, like Hex is a spell that is a bonus action. It's less of a direct damage capability and more of like something that kind of supplements you. So just be mindful of this, as these are the two biggest things you're going to worry about through the majority of the game. And as you get to level 5, well, pure level 5 as a specific character, so for example, a level 5 paladin will get extra attack, meaning when they use the attack action, they actually attack twice per action. So all those things are very important to know, because actions and bonus actions will occur outside of actual combat, right? Like say, for example, here, I'm going to use jump. And watch this little triangle when I press this button. That actually would use my bonus action if I were to jump, if that were to jump me into combat. So doing that dash would do the same effect. So you want to make sure that you're managing these before you jump into combat, so that you're not sitting there doing something and then jumping into combat and go, well, why did I not have an action to use in that combat? It's because you probably did something that burned your action right before you jumped into combat, so your character couldn't do anything. So it's just important to kind of manage that stuff, especially if you're playing any kind of rogue character that was trying to sleuth around and take advantage of anything around them, whatever have you. Jumping forward just a little bit, we now come into an actual combat. So our characters have rolled initiative, which we have no control over. We cannot change or do anything about it. But we can see from this that our characters here have gone and gotten the same roll for their initiative, which is both higher then all 3 of these imps, allowing us to go first in that order. This will change throughout every single one of your engagement. It's never going to be the same. But in combat, you can kind of get an idea of what's going to happen. And every time you see this kind of twist around the borders right here at the top, I can use these characters simultaneously. I don't have to use them sequentially. So I can go ahead, even though it started on Lae'zel, I can go ahead and use Tav right now and go do whatever I want. So be mindful of these things, because this allows you to say, well, you know what? This character is a melee character, but I can get some really good things off beforehand because I've got 2 enemies that are split left and right to me, and I don't know where I want to send the character. Well, use maybe your other character that is a ranged character or a caster to deal damage to the opposite target to see where you go. Or maybe you debuff a target first before you sign in for an attack. Whatever it is, you can use these moments to really line up the big alpha strikes as they were. And in this moment too, you can see what's about you on the battlefield. Kind of take a look around you. You can key on the, what's this thing called? This is a PC. I can press this button and this gives me it's O, allows me to have a nice good top-down view. Again, that's O on PC. I don't know what it is on console, but this allows me to kind of better navigate what is around me. And there are some things to kind of note when it comes to combat. So I have set in my settings, my measurement system like this. It'll be meters for you otherwise, right? But you can see where your movement goes by this dotted line. And as this thing changes colors, if I were to walk over, say, anything that was like on fire, it would show me like, hey, it's going to turn like bright red in that little split second, because you're going to take fire damage if you go over that substance like this right here. See that, how it changes its color? It's showing me that little bar, you have a possibility of taking fire damage there, be careful. And as I extend this all the way out, it will turn that like reddish pink, right? Where it's like, yep, you can't go that, you don't have enough movement. And this is further reflected in the bar around end turn. You can see as I drag this out, it shades that from that blue to like more of that like teal, right? That more of that like shaded in, because it's showing me how much it's taking up. And movement too is very crucial, because you can move and do anything you want and however you want to do it, but you just have to be mindful of how you're kind of applying that movement. Do I want to really close the distance between me and say this target? Well, I can dash. Cover more distance this turn. Double your movement speed. My movement speed, if I hover over this using PC, it tells me 30 feet. Everyone, for the most part, moves 30 feet until they get more levels, or if they're a wood elf, that'll kind of be buffed up. A wood elf will be start 40 feet. Or if you're a monk, you'll get unarmored movement, and a bunch of other ways that'll increase it, but base is 30 for the most part. And I can press this button, dash, and it'll allow me to close this distance. But I've just used my action to do that, right? It says action, dash. And now I can't attack, so I'm right up against them unless I have a bonus action that can do the attack. So in combat, you gotta be really mindful of how you're using those actions and bonus actions. How you're lining yourself up for these hits, because it's going to make the difference. Another thing too you can do with your action here in combat is throwing things. And throwing things, you might be like, that's not too cool, dude. Why am I gonna want to throw something if I never get it back? Well, there are things in the game that you will get back if you throw them, but mainly it's the ability to throw potions. You can take this potion that says 4 to 10 healing, and you know what? I'm a fighter. I'm not going to heal anyone as a fighter, but my paladin's really beat up. I can throw this directly onto, just ignore that disadvantage and percentage. It's always going to hit. You'd throw it, and it would hit the target and heal them. So throw is something that can be very advantageous to every single character in the game, because it allows you to get a heal out without using one of your critical resources like a spell slot. More on that in the spellcasting section of this huge guide. But from this little area here, we can determine if we want to go do melee combat using this weapon, or we can press this button and switch into range combat. So you can use either one on either character, whatever you'd like, whatever fits. Lae'zel here is a master of every single weapon, right? Because they're a fighter. You can use whatever you wish for whatever situation. And you can close the distance using stuff like, rush attack if you're a fighter, or if you have Misty Step like I talked about, which is a really cool spell that a lot of characters can tap into. You can use these as you see fit. Now, one thing I do want to talk about too is if I go ahead and move my cursor over here, it says provokes attack of opportunity. And the game will go through a lot of this stuff for you here, but I think it's important to understand how attacks of opportunity really work. Attack of opportunity basically locks you into the range of this target. If I hold down Control, you see that circle around Lae'zel? That's basically my attack of opportunity range. Anything that comes within range of my sword is within my attack of opportunity. Once they walk into that range, they're pretty much locked there unless they do something that would shut down my attack of opportunity. Knocking me prone, putting me to sleep, using the ability disengage. Retreat safely. Moving won't provoke opportunity attacks. Now, opportunity attacks are basically just a free attack that they get against you. There's no special anything to it unless there's special feats applied or whatever it is. But by and large, it's not going to be that deadly if they have an opportunity attack. It's when that this is on perhaps a wizard who only has like 8 or 7 hit points at the very beginning, where that can actually be pretty rough to deal with. So you'd use disengage to get out of those situations. It's important to note because this is how you can also lock the enemy down. Take, for example, I move over here with Lae'zel. This creature cannot move out of my opportunity range without taking damage. And that is crucial because it basically the AI will be locked into that and they'll stick there. They're not really gonna try to defy that. They're very rarely will disengage. But you'll also see when moving into range, threatened. An enemy is close, has disadvantage on ranged attack rolls. This also includes any kind of ranged attack spell that I would like to use. So basically, moving into close combat like this, even if I can't do damage, still allows me to shut down any kind of ranged play, like this character has a crossbow on them, even though you can't see it yet, or any kind of ranged spells. They are imposes a disadvantage on both parties. I, conversely, cannot use my bow and arrow right here because you can see it says disadvantage. And it even tells me exactly why I have disadvantage underneath the health bar to imp. Threatened, disadvantage. And the same thing with that imp. Now, another big thing for combat is inspecting things or examining things. Right click. Oh, we will right click. I don't know what this is on console. I hope that it's just a simple button for you guys. I can right click and press examine, or since I'm on PC, I can hover over and press T. That gives me all of the stats of this creature. Hit points, armor class, race, attributes, initiative, everything. So they all rolled a -21. This shows me when their initiative is, all that kind of stuff. Their type, it's a fiend, a size, small. That doesn't seem important, but it will come to be important later in the game because you'll have spells that will say, hey, you know what? Take less damage from fiends, or outright banish them, whatever it is. And what's important from this screen is to know what their armor class is, right? So that's a big one. So I know that if I roll an 8 in my attack roll, I'm going to hit this. But I also get to know what all of their stats are. And that's really beneficial for any spells that apply to these corresponding stats. And I know, like, okay, you know what? I'm going to cast a spell, but it's going to require a wisdom save. Well, this does not have a high wisdom. I'm pretty sure it's going to go off. So you can kind of cater how you address this creature. You'll see any kind of conditions that are applied to them through, say, threatened like this or poison, whatever it is. Any kind of resistances, and resistances will have the damage or they'll be outright immune to a specific damage. This resistance will apply to any mundane weapon like slashing, piercing, bludgeoning, or any element like lightning, thunder, radiant, poison, acid, light or fire, ice, all sorts of things. They can either be vulnerable to it, where they will take double damage, resistant to it, they will take half damage, or immune, they'll take no damage. And you'll see, there are little context clues. It's very, very obvious which is what. And the notable features are anything that the creature just has persistently always on them. They always have dark vision, they have devil's sight, and they have opportunity attack. If I go ahead and do this on tab over here, I can see all these notable features that the character always has on. So you see that you get quite a bit of information by hovering over, pressing T, and examining them. And you just kind of go through this process, left clicking and attacking your way to victory. And if you want more information on this, you press this combat log button. I can see. All right, Imp's armor class was 7. My attack roll was a 4, plus 2 for my proficiency, plus 3 for my strength. Holy shit, just barely going off at a 9. Then I made a damage roll. 5 plus 3 equals 8. And I'm going to quickly talk about that because every single weapon will have a damage roll on it. Now you've got versatile weapons, you've got one-handed weapons, you've got two-handed weapons. Versatile means it can be used either with one hand or with two hand. That's why you see these 2 sets of dice here. Otherwise, you would just see this, 1 set of die. This shows me 1d6, so a single 6-sided dice will be rolled, and I'll get a +1 to its bonus. Versus this, a single 10-sided die will be rolled, and I'll get a +3. Conversely, if I was using a shield, a single 8-sided die would be rolled, and I would be getting a +3. Compare this over to Tav, who has a versatile weapon as well, right? You can see the difference between which die is highlighted here between Tav and Lae'zel. You can see the 1d10 is highlighted, and you can see the 1d8 is highlighted. So versatile means you can equip again. You can use it with one-handed and equip a shield. You can dual wield it. Doesn't really matter. But you can also take your shield off and use 2 hands just like that. And then from there, you would do all of your damage, getting any kind of modifiers from proficiency, strength, whatever it is. Go ahead and apply those damages after that attack roll. But that coincides with just combat and melee and everything like that. Again, too, we've used our primary action here, so we can do other things in these moments. And don't kind of sleep on your bonus actions. You don't go, oh, okay, well, all I can do is shove here or pommel strike. That all seems really boring. Shove is extremely important because you can actually push someone into like a precipice here. Like if I had enough movement and I could really kind of like finesse this around, you can see the dotted arrow of where this would go. If I got this right, I could push this creature into here and it would die outright. And another big thing with your bonus action, like let's say I couldn't actually reach all the way over here. Well, if I press this button, I'm going to move a little bit and then I'm going to jump to this location. So while I could not run this distance, I've jumped over here and I still have 6 more feet to come over here and do damage. And it doesn't matter where you place yourself with this character, you'll be able to, there's no like, oh, I'm back here, I do backstab damage or anything like that. Not like that in this game. But just to kind of finish this off, there we go. So this covers our combat, our melee, our actions, our bonus actions, putting everything together here. Let's talk a little bit now about spellcasting. Another note too on combat here. When you go into a situation like this, when you have 2 characters paired together and you've ended the turn on a previous one, if you've not ended both those characters' turns, you can come back to this previous one and you can see here at the bottom, well, I've used Lae'zel's bonus action, but I did not use her primary action, and I ended her turn. Well, we can cancel that end turn and still use that primary action. So if you've ended a character's action and it didn't just jump to the next thing in line, you can kind of backtrack here and go, I made a mistake, didn't mean to do that. Let me go ahead and take advantage of that action that I left undone and shoot this imp. This allows you to kind of shore up any little issues. Oh, you know what? I'll get the final little bit of walking out. We'll switch over back to her melee weapon because if something moves within range and moves out of range, if the melee weapon isn't equipped, they will not use an opportunity attack. We'll then end that turn over here and so just another little tip for combat there that you probably didn't know about, that you're like, oh man, I completely botched that. You can still sometimes rectify it if you have 2 characters bound together like this. Spellcasting is another portion of Baldur's Gate that is very wide and spanning, and it is very important too. I'm going to go ahead and bring up our spell book. If you're on PC, that's simply pressing K. But you can see here that we are looking at Shadowheart. She is the cleric, and she has all of her spells. Wizards will scribe their spells into their spellbook using scrolls that they find. Sorcerers will get their spells innately, and bards, rangers, and paladins will all get, and monks, depending if you're a monk of 4 elements or not, will get their spells whenever they level up. Now, all classes will have different ways of dealing with their spells. Warlocks as well will get their spells when they level up. You will put them into a spell book like this, and you can simply swap them out depending on the class. So for example here, a wizard can swap them out, a cleric can swap them out, a druid can swap them out. Pretty much everyone else has to actually do this on a level up. And I might have missed one or two there. It may be palatable. But still, my point remains, be careful when you're doing your level ups. You can simply respec your character, right? But just you use your spellbook to swap these in and out depending on the character. But why we have this up, though, is to talk about some other mechanics. You've got this right here, which tells you your spell casting ability. And this applies to whatever the spell is. You can have a multi-class and a bunch of different spellcasting capabilities. I did a whole video on this, linked in the upper right-hand corner. But for all intents and purposes, we are a cleric, so our spellcasting ability is wisdom. It tells us right there. We then have our spell save DC. DC stands for difficulty class. Basically, it's whatever the enemy is rolling against. So you would say, hey, I'm going to attack someone with a spell, and this is the roll that I'm basically going to be using, right? So certain spells require enemies to make a saving throw. The higher your spell difficulty class, the harder it is to resist your spell. So right now, if I were to cast, let's just say, X spell, then the enemy has to beat a 13 or higher for their saving throw, or else that spell actually goes off. So if they were to roll an 11, my spell goes off. If they were to roll a 14, they beat my spell save DC, and the spell goes off. Your spell save DC, though, you can see right there at the bottom, it's a base of 8. And then your spell casting ability is added into this. That is 3, because our wisdom is high enough. It says right there, wisdom plus 3. And then your proficiency bonus. This will always grow over time, right? Once we hit level 5, that number becomes 14 because we have a proficiency bonus of plus 3. Once we become level 9, it now will become 16 because our proficiency bonus is plus 4. Now, you can just see this all truncated right there if you wish. Like, okay, that 3 and that 2, it's just right there. You don't have to hover over both. You can look at this and go, okay, cool, it said 13 because of the plus 5. Got it, understood. Let's just go to town. Now, from that, though, we get some different ways to look at this and approach this. I'm going to hover over Guiding Bolt. Guiding Bolt will tell me that it is an attack roll, meaning a roll that determines whether an attack hits a target. The attack succeeds if the roll matches or exceeds the target's armor class. That is important. Range attacks are subject to high ground rules and have disadvantage if you are within the melee range of an enemy. And then the next attack roll against the target has advantage. So there is also a wisdom save that is being done here. So you can see that there's a lot of different things for all these, like attack roll, wisdom save. Attack roll, wisdom save. Have any more attack rolls here? No, I don't think. Oh, here we go. This is just straight up a dex save. So usually what these are saying is you are doing this damage, and the wisdom save is what's going to basically determine whether or not they're going to save against it. Or there's a secondary effect, and it's an attack roll, it's going to hit, and then there is a secondary effect that's going to kick in if they make that wisdom save. So you just hover over these to get that bit of information, and it's going to tell you how that attack works, what it's taking advantage of as far as the spell casting ability it might be using, all sorts of things. So Guiding Bolt, your next attack roll against this target has advantage, and that lasts for 2 turns. But if they succeed this wisdom save, then boom, you know what? If the roll is higher than the difficulty class, the target resists the spell. So there's a lot of things that kind of go on with a lot of spells, and some spells auto hit, like Magic Missile will auto hit no matter what. They have to use spell shield to reflect it away or whatever it is. And outside of that, some spells will say this, concentration. So the way concentration works is you cast it. I'm even going to show it off for you here. Let's go ahead and put it on the character. Cast it properly. There we go. So now it says Bless and Concentration Bless. You'll see this right here that denotes that we have Bless active. Bless lasts for 10 turns, so this thing's going to fall off by the time I'm done speaking. But what this means is I cannot cast another concentration spell unless I want Bless to fall off. If I were to cast, let's say, Bane, which is also a concentration spell, it will replace my character's concentration on that spell. So this is important because you're going to have a lot of characters that have overlapping different concentration spells. So using 2 concentration spells, the game will prioritize the most recent one cast. So for example, if I were to cast Bane right now, my character would auto shut off Bless and cast Bane instead. Conversely, you can press this little X to shut off that concentration. And another thing to consider here too, concentration will stay active as long as your character has not been hit or the spell hasn't expired. So in 10 turns, Bless expires. But if my character gets hit, they make a concentration roll, which is basically a constitution check.
Unseen. Perfect.
Caster needs to focus on maintaining the spell. They can only cast 1 concentration spell at a time, and their concentration might be broken when they take damage. So if someone were to hit me, all that damage resolves and everything like that, and then I make a concentration roll, which is based off of my constitution. So I'd roll a d20 die, and I would say, okay, if I roll an 11, I fail. So I gotta make sure I beat, sorry. I'm basically rolling against my constitution, and I wanna make sure I get high enough. If I don't, I screw this whole thing up, and I failed my constitution, right? So you want to make sure, since it's a saving throw like that, you want to make sure that you're rolling it appropriately. You're not doing the roll. The game does it all for you. So that's why high constitution helps you out, or constitution proficiency helps you out in maintaining your constitution or your concentration rolls. Constitution, concentration, oh God, they just get jumbled up in my brain. Now, the last little bit of information I want to talk about with spellcasting are spell slots. As you can see here, for almost all casters, spell slots regenerate on a long rest, as opposed to a warlock, which gets them on a short rest. And what you get here too are basically a resource. All spells of a corresponding level will use that level's spell slot. But most spells that are, let's say, level 1 can use a level 2 spell slot. It sometimes buffs them, it sometimes does not. There's no concrete rule on that. Take, for example, Bless. If I were to cast it with a level 2 spell slot, it doesn't get a buff to the amount of bonus here, but I can cast it on another target. Or some spells will just tell you, yeah, there's no bonus to casting it with another spell slot. It just allows you to cast with a spell slot you might actually have a surplus of or whatever. And that's important because, let's say I go ahead and just So now you can see they're grayed out. I am out of level 1 spell slots. I cannot cast them until I do a long rest. Now in this scenario here in this little Nautiloid ship, I can't long rest. So there we go. My spell slots are regenerated, and I can go ahead and cast those spells. You can click this thing and it'll just show you what your level 1 spells are. And when you go up to level 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 as an absolute max, you can click those corresponding ones and it will show you what you can do. Outside of those level spell slots, though, is a cantrip. Now, cantrips are level 0 spells, meaning that they can be cast as many times as you want. Don't ever worry about their exhausting a spell slot. A spell that does not use any spell slots and can be cast at will. Every turn, I can go ahead and cast this. I can go crazy, use all these cantrips as much as I want. It's not going to matter. It's not going to do it's not going to affect anything. So cantrips are nice because it basically gives your spellcaster some form of way to be useful every single turn, even if they're out of spell slots. And it's a nice way too to help you out in the actual world, right? I can use guidance on any of my rolls to get a 1d4 bonus to ability checks. There's plenty of ways to use cantrips, and I just wanted to really bring them up. And it's also, last thing too here, some spells will be actions, some spells will be bonus actions. Do I have any bonus action spells? Okay, yeah, here we do. Healing Word, for example, is one that will use a bonus action and a level 1 spell slot. So that is how you know how all these spells kind of come together, what they're really kind of going to be using, how they really kind of fall into each other, and how it all pulls in the same thing. Now, outside of your spells, you have any kind of class actions, not to be confused with class action lawsuits, that maybe your class just gets innately. Say, for example, my Paladin has class actions of Healing Radiance, Lay on Hands, and Divine Sense. These are not bound to spell slots, they're not bound to anything, and more often than not, they are bound usually to a short rest before you can use them again, or in some cases a long rest. Just depends on what it is. You'll have common things, which is just everyone has access to this, or you'll have special stuff that is maybe specific to your race. So for example, weapon, common, and passive, this everyone gets access to these depending upon their weapon proficiency here for some of the stuff, but you know, like these two, everyone's gonna get. As you can see, mine's over here for man attack. But then you'll see your racial ones are right here in this section at the top. That's hard to see. Reactions, though, are different. Reactions respond to events and triggers even outside of your turn. You can toggle them on and or off, and whether they automatically trigger or ask for input. This is important because you will be dealing with a lot of things in this game that will trigger reactions. And reactions, as you can see, is a replenishable resource. Reactions, such as opportunity attacks, are responses you can have to events. Reactions can trigger both during and outside of your turn. An opportunity attack is the quickest and easiest one to give you an example of, but you press this little button here, and this little button, this checkbox, choose whether the reaction triggers automatically or whether the game pauses for your decision whether or not it clicks off. You'll have items that will trigger reactions, spells, all sorts of abilities. It's going to be very prevalent. And then you can click this and just shut it off entirely, so it'll never even ask you, it'll never even trigger. It's important to kind of know this because reactions can only happen once per turn. It says recharge once per turn. So if someone moves within range of me, triggers my opportunity attack once they try to leave that range, I use it and hit them, and another person tries to move outside of range of me, I cannot do an opportunity attack on them. It was once per turn. I've used my once. I have to wait until my turn again until I can use these. So outside of our spell book and everything like that, wanted to make sure you knew about this stuff before going forward. Now, I know this is a beginner's guide, but here's a big, strong beginner's tip. When you're playing through the Nautiloid ship and you get to this part, this is the end of the Nautiloid ship, you're going to see this guy with this big flaming sword. Before you have gone into this engagement, if you go to your spell book and make sure Shadowheart has command on her spell list, you can go ahead and use this spell. Command drop. Command a creature to drop its weapon on its turn and do nothing else. Just to kind of give you a little bit further into this, you can see this lasts for 1 turn. It's got a range of 60 feet, and the character must make a wisdom save. Now, this guy doesn't have the highest wisdom at 12, but he still has decent wisdom. If I click this, when I hover over, we can see that it's probably going to be a little difficult for this to kick off. And two, if we take a look at this, we can see all the resistances that we talked about before, right? We see this character not only has fire resistance, but it's really going to be hard. Fire damage halved against this entity from magical attacks is halved. Fire damage against this entity from non-magical attacks is halved. So this thing is really not going to take a lot of damage from anything, right? So if this had a little kind of glowy box around it, it would be completely immune. But I wanted to show off what resistances look like and how we kind of take a look at these stats. But we're going to go ahead and press drop on this character. It might not happen right now. Let's see if I get lucky. But I can get lucky too and have that character drop its sword. Hey, it worked. Holy shit. So we jump back over to my main character who's within range of that sword. I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard. That's going to highlight everything around me, right? So I can see what I can loot, what I can interact with. I'm going to put my cursor over Everburn Blade and pick that up. Go to my inventory. This is the best two-handed weapon you're going to get in Act 1, bar none. You'll maybe get a replacement at the beginning of Act 2, but this thing will last you a long time. Because you can see here that it does, its normal amount of damage of 2d6, which is substantial, plus an additional 1d4 of fire damage. So if you're playing maybe a two-handed paladin, a two-handed barbarian, whatever it is, this weapon is going to be very beneficial for you. And this is usually like kind of like a tips and tricks video, but it still helps to exemplify a lot of what we talked about. I picked up that weapon, didn't cost me an action, but I did equip it, so it did cost me an action. And now I'm going to try to run away from this creature. It's going to trigger this cutscene. And it did not trigger its what's it called? It's opportunity attack, because it was just recently stunned and it came out of its stun. So I'm lucky there. But still, regardless, you can see how I used the spell, took a look at this character's wisdom. We just basically got that off at 55%, picked up that weapon, and now we have a super strong weapon for the rest of the game, and it's going to allow us to push towards the end of this ship. Now, another big focus of the game is on inspirations, and inspirations will basically give you a free reroll to ability checks. Now, you can just simply save scum. You can press F5 if you're on PC to quick save, and F8 to quick load in the middle of a conversation to do a quick to save scum. I don't really recommend that. I mean, you definitely can. I've done it. I mean, but I'm just saying, I've noticed though that it kind of gamifies the game, and it takes away a lot of the inherent risk of doing any of these RPG-esque rolls. So with inspirations though, it gives you max of 4 rerolls that you can do on any kind of ability check. Maybe you're trying to pop open a lock. Maybe you're trying to disarm a trap. Maybe you're trying to do a specific dialogue option. Whatever it is, you'll get these inspirations. And these inspirations are dictated off of the background of the characters you have joining you in your party. Their background goals, as you can, if I click over soldier, it says you're trained in battlefield tactics and combat, having served in militia, mercenary company, or officer corps. Show smart tactics and bravery on the battlefield to enhance your prowess. And what that's saying is it has to do more with like your decision to deal with quests or overcome obstacles. Did you use maybe your brawn rather than your intelligence, or rather than, you know, something that is kind of siding with the divine or in service of others, like the acolyte would be. Folk hero, which is saving innocents in imminent danger, will make your legend grow. All these little things for all the characters within your party will grow your inspiration. And once you get to 4, you're maxed out there. So you should be using them throughout your campaign. It'll tell you if you fail a check, you can use an inspiration to do the reroll. But it's something the game doesn't quite illustrate how they really work for you. So I wanted to bring this up as a quick little primer on them, because you should definitely be using your inspiration to push through a lot of the harder checks you're going to have. Ability checks are a big portion of the game. And I've talked about every little bit about the ability checks and how they operate, but I haven't shown off how they actually work in actuality when it comes to your conversations. So you'll see here what happens when we're going to go make an intimidation check. This is a charisma check for myself, and I can see that the difficulty class, also known as the DC, is denoted right here. I would click this button and it's going to roll the dice for me. But then I'd see at the bottom all my total bonuses, right? So +3 for my charisma and +2 for my intimidation proficiency. We also have bonuses that can be added to our character from things like bardic inspiration from bards, or the guidance spell here that is a cantrip from clerics. Wizards or warlocks and other, I think bards even, get friends. Well, actually, I don't think warlocks get friends, but friends is another one that would get added into here. Or charm person. There's all sorts of bonuses that can be added into your dice roll, but you can only get one bonus from one character at a time. So we can do this and add guidance into our total amount of bonuses. It's worth noting here, this will say total bonus 6 to 9. Sometimes you can get a bonus that'll add an advantage. Remember, like we said, advantage is taking 2 die and rolling them simultaneously. Whichever one is the higher is the one you will take. And it will actually tell you if you decided, hey, you know what? I'd like to do an advantage here. It'll tell you the total amount of bonus. So sometimes just adding flat bonus to the dice roll is better than an advantage. I guess typically the general rule of thumb that I've heard from D&D players is that if you can get a bonus, like a flat bonus like this, and advantage, it's the most advantageous way to do a dice roll versus just 2 flat bonuses. I'm not a big D&D player, unfortunately. Also, too, quick side note, lower left corner, click this button to change the die design if you wish. If you have any of the collector's editions and stuff like that that can do this, you would do this in the lower corner. But we'll go ahead and roll this dice. So we got a 5 dead on, but now we got a 3 and a 2, and this dice rolls for a +1. So we succeeded the check here. Now it's worth noting, this is the most important thing to know about this roll. If it is a 1, it is an auto failure. You get no bonuses. So if that difficulty class was a 2 and I rolled a 1, all my bonuses would have given me enough to succeed it. But no matter what, a 1 will always fail in every single roll in the game. But on the opposite end of that, a 20 will always succeed. So you will encounter difficulty classes that'll say 30 or some sort of stupid high number. If you don't already have a bonus that's going to bring you up to 30, just simply rolling a 20, rolling a 20 would give you a critical success, which is contrary to number 1 is a critical failure, and you will automatically succeed whatever the difficulty class, no matter if it's 500 or if it's 2, you will always succeed. So that is how your actual ability checks come into fruition here in the game. But if I were to fail this, it would say right here, inspiration. You'd click it and it would redo the whole screen prior to this, and you'd roll the die again. But I really wanted to show off how these checks come together in the actual game. So we've done a bit of combat. We've roughed ourselves up a little bit. Get the left side of the screen. Some characters a little more beat up. Well, you can use healing potions to heal yourself, which you can here. Or you can go ahead and press this button and do a short rest. If you have a bard in your party, they've got the Song of Rest. If you have a cleric, a level 2 spell is the Prayer of Healing, which is basically like a healing from a short rest. But you'll see here, short rest. Twice a day, you can restore 50% of your hit points. Warlocks restore their spell slots. Also, if you have anything, such as this, that says short rest and a little recycle thing, button, whatever that is right there, recharge, all those abilities are going to get turned back online. So short resting is very crucial because it allows you to not have to go back to camp, which is our long rest. So you can use camp supplies to regain hit points, spell slots, and short rests. So you have these 2 short rests before you have to go do a long rest. Long rests, I'm going to go ahead and press this button. It's going to end the day for us. Well, no, I don't want to end the day, but you'd press this button. We'll just go back to the camp. There we go. The button below it just sends you to camp without doing the rest. And you'd go and use this.
Let's see what this does.
And it would tell us to end the day. We would use our camp supplies. Everything here would turn to nighttime, and it would further narrative portions of the story. So maybe you have a specific romance that you're doing with a character, or maybe you've talked to someone in a portion of the game that said, well, I'll see you in your camp. That's when you would see them. So long rests are still very important to the narrative. And the only cost for a long rest is camp supplies, which you're going to have in spades. So don't feel like going and doing a long rest is a bad thing or it's going to slow down the pace of the game or anything. Doing long rests furthers a lot of the really cool stories you're going to interact with in this game. And I encourage you to do them as much as you'd like, because it allows you to really see each and all the details of everything in between. Let's go back here. We'll press this button to leave camp, and we'll go back to where we were in the field, and we'll go ahead and press a short rest. Get people healed back up. Let's talk now about leveling. Once you reach the max amount of experience for a required location, you can level up. Let's press this button, and we can see the level up screen. So the character will tell us, hey, you're level 2 now. What do you want to do now that you're level 2? You'll see all the things that you get by hitting that new level: health, class, action, spells, any kind of passives, anything like that. Any fighting styles, any new spells, whatever. But you'll also see in the upper right hand corner of this screen, this little cross. And that is add class. So this is how you multi-class. This is how you spice into the direction of adding more classes into your existing class. So you've got 2 different types of levels. Your character level, which you can see right here, level 2. Your character level is the combination of all of your class levels. So our class level is 1 paladin and 1 barbarian, equaling 2 is our overall character level. And you can spice into any direction you want. This will give you proficiencies. This will give you skills from specific classes. You'll get all sorts of things that gets kind of flavored into your character. And anything you gain as far as proficiencies, you'll see over here on the right side of the screen. It'll just pop up. It'll tell you. And then anything you get as far as any kind of spells or abilities or features or actions, it'll be under here in this location. You You can press details. This will also show you all that stuff right there as well. I'm gonna pop through them. It is worth noting though, I've chosen Paladin. Paladin starts with heavy armor and Fighter starts with heavy armor. These are the only two classes in the game that natively start with heavy armor, for the exception of Ranger, if they choose a specific favored enemy in Ranger Knight, or Cleric, if they choose a specific domain, such as Life, Light, and War, and Tempest, I think. Yeah, and Tempest. Oh, Light doesn't get it. Life does. So Tempest, War, and Light, and Nature. They all get heavy armor. So if you don't have those to start with, you cannot add heavy armor typically. And what I mean by that is, if I started as a Warlock and I said, you know what? I want to be a Warlock that wears heavy armor, so I'm going to add in Fighter. Well, if I started as a Warlock, Fighter will only add medium armor to me. You have to start as a Fighter and go into Warlock. Heavy armor is just one of those weird ones that, depending upon the class you take and what combination, doesn't add it into your character unless, like I said, you go with the favorite enemy of Ranger Knight for Ranger, or a specific subclass domain from Cleric. It's one of the only, they're the only two classes that will give you heavy armor after not starting as a heavy armor class. It's just a kind of a weird proficiency thing that I did want to bring up. So again, if you want to be a wizard or a sorcerer or a warlock or a monk or a bard or a barbarian or a druid that wears heavy armor, you have to start as someone who wears heavy armor, or multi-class into Cleric or Ranger to bring heavy armor into the character. Multiclassing a druid into a fighter will not give you heavy armor. But this is how you would multiclass, and you would simply select whatever you wish to add into your character at whatever point you'd want to do that. And then you'd simply press accept, and they would get all the benefits that you decided to multiclass into. Now, another big portion of Baldur's Gate is going to come down to your party composition. And I don't really have anything to show off for this screen. I'm just show you the camp. And this is more of an ethos or a way of playing or a style of playing. And I don't want you to get hamstrung in the analysis paralysis of having, like, say, the typical RPG trinity, right? Of a damage dealer, a tank, and a healer. You don't need that in Baldur's Gate. You really don't even need that in 5th edition D&D. A lot of people actually tell you that healing is really bad for action economy. If you want a healer, then do it. If you want to play a party that does not have a cleric and doesn't have any healers, then do it. You're going to be just fine. Like I said, you can throw potions at people and that heals them. Your character can quaff potions as a bonus action and it heals them. There are plenty of ways to heal your character. So don't get caught up in like, oh man, I got this composition idea with like a fighter, a barbarian, a rogue, and a wizard, but I won't have anyone to heal. That's okay. You've got tons of potions. You've got, I don't know, the fighter has a heal on their own. Your wizard has tons of ways to mitigate damage. Barbarian has got just a disgusting amount of health to begin with. And your rogue can just kind of poop into smoke and go all over the place. There's plenty of ways to navigate the game without a healer. So I just don't want you to jump into this at the first time and go, all right, well, let me make a cleric, let me get a paladin, let me get a rogue, and let me get a wizard and just go about it. And if you want to do that, that's a perfectly fine, viable party. I just don't want you to get lost in the sauce of that and go, oh, okay, well, I got to have these. Furthermore, too, the one thing I would say your character, your class, your party, whatever, does need is someone who has a good sleight of hand skill. This can be a bard. It can be a character that is a paladin that has the sleight of hand as part of their background, like a charlatan or a thief. You can jump into a rogue who's got it. My ranger had it when I played through the game. I didn't even use any other character other than my ranger to pick locks and disarm things. So while it is not necessarily bound to a single class, it is a single skill I think you should focus on, because picking locks in the game is nice. You can destroy any locked chests and it does not destroy items though. That's a crucial bit of information where it does do that for other CRPGs like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and Icewind Dale 1 and 2. You can destroy anything that's locked if you really want to, but disarming traps and picking locks can be very, very advantageous. So just make sure I'd say you have one character that can do that. Other than that, make the party comp you want to play with There's min-max ones to do this. There's the most OP party comps. I even have a video with that exact title. Ignore it if you don't want to play with that party comp. Play exactly how you want with whatever origin characters that you want to play with, because they're so fun and so diverse, and it encourages replayability into the game. You can swap out different characters at different points in the game if you feel like that's the one that's better fit for them. Like, oh, you know what? You're in Act 2 and there's a lot of nature stuff, so I'm going to bring the druid character with me. Or you know what? You're in Act 3 and there's a lot of like weird things that coincide with the Starion, so I'm going to bring him with me for this act. You can do that, or you can just stick with the same party. Play the game however you want. You spent your money on it. Don't worry about the comp. There's plenty to go about this. One of the last subjects I want to talk about here, though, is your vendor, your item management, all that kind of stuff. So taking a look at our inventory, I've jumped over to another one of my characters, my monk specifically. You have the ability to move things around as you see fit. You can organize things by pressing this sort by button. You can search for things if I type in health or heal. Here's my potions of healing. You can close that filter out. You've got all these ways that you can manage stuff. I can left click here, hold down shift if I'm on PC, and do that. Move a cluster of things. Got lots to do this. I can right click and I can send this to a specific character. So you know what? The person who holds all of my, let's just say, arrows, I'm going to send this to this character. And there it goes. So just right click and sends it right away to them. And from here too, I can do another thing called add to wares. So if I click this, let's shift, click all the way through. Right click, I'm going to see add to wares. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is like on console, but all these little symbols pop up, shows me that it's in the wares, and we're going to show you what I can do with this. So we're going to talk to Aaron here.
Need anything else?
Go to trade. So I can go ahead and switch this at the top between trade and barter. Trade just allows me to just sell my wares or just sell things outright. So I can go ahead and just press this button and it's sold. Or press this button and it sells all my wares. Conversely, we click this and it offers me the capability to barter. So you know what? Hey, you know what? I really want this dagger. At the bottom, demand value is 40 and I'm offering nothing. So I can press the little scales and it will just simply put the 40 gold I've got and we're good to go. Go ahead and move that. But if I want to add a bunch of items and maybe you're on PC and you're like, oh man, I'm going to drag these all one at a time, just simply double click them. Double click, add them all across. That way you don't need to drag and hurt your finger doing it. You've got all that. And that would allow you just to simply put everything in there. Now, outside of that though, and you also have these filters too. I should probably say that. A buyback filter too if you need that. Outside of that is the standing of this character over here in the lower right hand. Now I can cast friends on this, and this gives this guy like 100% discount. It's not free, he halves the cost of everything for the most part. And if I hover over this, it tells me the cost in the lower right hand corner, right? So let's just look at one item in specific. This shovel costs 3. You know what? I want something a little bit more. So it's a little bit easier to see what the discount's like. We'll go with this goblin scimitar. Cost me 75, right? Because I don't have a discount associated with it. He doesn't really like me. Doesn't really have any kind of discount here from my charisma. Nothing of the sort. I'm going to go ahead, though, and give him some money. I'm just going to donate it to him. Now, I do not recommend you do this with every single vendor you come across. In fact, I think only very few vendors are worth doing this. For example, in the very first location you get to, the Emerald Grove, if you are not going to be evil, doing this to Damon, D-A-M-M-O-N, I'll show you where he is on the map, will allow you to have a discount on a vendor that will be existent throughout all of the acts of the game, as long as you're not an evil playthrough. So just kind of be mindful of that. You don't need to do this with every single character. There might even be some things that you just don't want. And the inventory of these vendors will reset upon 2 things. 1, you level up, or 2, you do a long rest. So some item or some stock here that you're like, you know what, I really wanted a hand crossbow, but it doesn't have a damn hand crossbow. Go do a long rest, and hand crossbow might pop up. get another level, and you'll get better items accessible by this character up into a point. Like it won't just grow into an infinity, and you can get the best gear on the first level person here, vendor. But just to show you what this does, and this amount of gold for the discount amount will vary depending upon your level. I think level 1 to get 100% all the way over this little bar all the way over, it's like 400 gold. So we're level 4, so we'll say 737. Donate these items. Yes. Okay, cool. So we're just shy of 100 attitude, but it still gives us a 23% discount. This Goblin Scimitar, which was 75 gold, is now 61. So that's just kind of a bit of a trick of the trade I wanted to show off and talk about. You can use the cantrip Friends. Just keep in mind, if you're on a harder difficulty, they'll get pissed off at you. They'll be like, whoa, 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 are you trying to enchant me, buddy? What'd you put in my drink? Like, they'll get upset. But if you're playing on balanced or storyteller mode, whatever the base one is, they're not gonna mind at all. I unfortunately don't have a character who has friends that I can see. I do not. But that character, Damon, that I was talking about, will be right here on the map. If here's the Emerald Grove, when you come in, right here. I go click over there. There'll be a little tiefling that is over here in this location. You can go ahead and take advantage of giving this guy over here a really good attitude towards you. He'll give you good discounts, and he'll be there for all 3 of the acts, and it's a great way to take advantage. But vendoring and item management and selling is a big portion of this game, and I don't think it really gives you a ton of information on how to really take advantage of it to the most of your capability. You can also, if you're kind of a tricksy devil, you can do a lot of stuff like stealing from them, which a lot of people do. I don't really play like that, but you definitely can. Like, you can use one character to, like, okay, I'll press this guy. We're talking. Well, I'll press character select at the lower left here. Switch to Asterion. Use my rogue. Go into sneaky sneaks. And pickpocket him. So I go, oh, you know what? Let's just try to take some of this off, and that and this. And I don't know. I'm just clicking items. Press the steal button. Hey, we succeeded. So we stole those items, right? So, or that item. So just to kind of show you here that you can actually steal once you've sold or done other things. There's plenty of ways to kind of interact with it. And that's a super cheesy way to do it, but still, I wanted to kind of illustrate that. I have a whole guide on stealthing and stealing and ambushing and assassinating and all that, but I wanted to explain that as this section because people will bring that up in the comments, I'm sure. So at that, it kind of brings our video here to a close. We've covered a lot of the major concepts within the game. You know, we've covered combat, we've covered how to multi-class, how skills and proficiencies and ability checks and spell slots and spells and cantrips and vendoring and all these things and how they work. And there's still more stuff I did not cover in this video. But hopefully this gives you a really good idea on how all this stuff really kind of comes together. And you're going to be discovering a lot of this throughout the rest of your gameplay and experience. And don't worry about taking it slow. You're going to fail through some of it. You're going to save scum through some of it. Don't worry about that. I said, it's a single player narrative game. Enjoy yourself through this experience because it is truly one of my favorite, personally, like I've been playing video games since I was like 6. This is personally one of my favorite video games I've ever played. And I grew up on like Ultima Online, man. I am from the crypt. But my biggest bit of encouragement to you, play the game as the dice is rolled. Try not to save scum. If you can, if you do, who cares? I do it. I do it all the damn time. If you really don't want an outcome for your story, then just save scum. You know, have fun with your experience of this game because it's very rich, and you'll only have this experience once, the first time, right? And even then, when you go to replay this game, there's going to be a lot of shit you miss. You're like, oh man, I'm going to experience a lot of stuff for the first time all over again. So have fun, enjoy it. Try to stick with the decisions you've decided for your character and the role play and how the game kind of unfolds before you. You know, maybe failing a role on your first playthrough is going to be so much more fun when you come back to that point. But now you're a Dark Urge character, and that whole point is way different now because you've colored the game in a different way. So have fun, enjoy yourself. If you have any questions or anything like that you need help with, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. As I've said, I've got like 40 plus videos that's not even a hyperbole, a link at the end of this that should help you out in jumping into any of the characters, a bunch of different builds, a bunch of specific mechanics. You'll find that in the end of the video, the upper right corner, all over the place. You can jump into that playlist. And two, if you are a veteran watching this video, kind of wanting to see, oh, what did this guy even talk about? Help people out in the comments. If you see someone that is struggling with a certain portion of the game, tell them how you got through it or what you can do to help yourself in these situations. Or if you have any general tips, just let it be known in the comment section below. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one. Take care.